G'day subscribers, today we're going to talk about modifications and wheels. You're with Jules Knight on Jive Talking Garage. Well, thanks for joining us here on Jive Talking Garage. Today we're going to talk about wheels to start off with. Now, I haven't had any sedans on the road. I've had a really nice sedan that was, shall we say, rust-free. It wasn't registered, and a fellow at the time offered me more money than I thought it was worth, so I just gave up and said, sure, you can take it. However, I want to talk about utes and vans, because vans are just utes with tops on them. So I've had Michelangelo draw this up for me, and I'm actually going to talk about this leading edge on the inside of the ute or the panel van at the top. So it's where the inner skin meets the outer quarter panel, where this quarter panel folds down. Now, what can happen is this is what it looks like standard. Now, you can see that it's sort of pretty flat there, and then it's got a little curl where those two panels meet. And then you got your wheel here, your tire, and it's supposed to, miss that quarter panel as it goes up and down. I've got it a little bit close there, but it's only for the purpose of just the illustration. But when I got a set of 15-inch wheels, because my ute came with 13-inch wheels, and they were a little bit too small. With an FJ diff, the engine used to scream a little bit too much and rev a little bit too much. And so by going from a 13-inch, it allowed me to be able to get the hubcaps off easier. It allowed me to have a taller tire. So I went with a Bridgestone ER78 S14, and it was a bit higher. But so I've gone from, this type of configuration, but when I modified the wheel, I was getting a bump going this way. Now, even though I didn't modify it, I've seen some modifications. What they do is they actually roll that little right angular piece up so that you can see what they're trying to do. They're trying to get the up and down travel of the tire and suspension on the spring away from the inner lip of the quarter panel, where the quarter panel goes up on the wheel arch. So you can see from an illustration what is happening here. And part of the problem is when you put these wheels into a Wheelworks to get done, so you're giving them an FJ center and they're putting on what's called a hoop. So a hoop is just it's a naked rim. It has no center in it. It can be 14 inches or 15 inches. Now, 15 inches are going to it's going to have a lot of tire on the inside. It's certainly possible, but it will depend upon where the backspace is on the wheel. So I've got FJ wheels here, but I'll just grab this white one so you can see, as my dogs go off in the background, you can see the wheel, the hoop that's here, this piece, the rim, and then you've got the center. But if you look here, you can see how far indented the inner face, the back face of the center is compared to the hoop. So what that's doing is, let's grab this for a moment. So depending upon where your backspace is, you can move the wheel in by having the backspace further to the front, or you can move the wheel out by moving the backspace further to the back. Okay, so you can see the importance of backspace is on a modified wheel. Now, the easy modification to do, let's just say in the 60s, was to take the FJ brakes off and install, like for instance, an FEFC setup, a different type of hub. For instance, that's an FJ axle, whereas a later model has another disc on here with bolts on it, which allow you to actually put different bolt pattern wheels on an FJ by changing the axle. Axle steels will remain the same for here. However, by changing the axle and the brake arrangement, and the same at the front, if you change the front hubs from kingpins for an FJ to a later model hub arrangement, it'll allow you to fit different wheels on them. That sort of gets the center of gravity down from old 15-inch wheels, 4-inch rims. You can put bigger wheels on them. But the important thing is backspace, because if I had weight in my ute, it would I'd go over a bump and it would scrape the shoulders of the tires. So it was really important for me to just be careful about how I was driving and where I was driving. And if I was going across any big bumps or whatever, I would just have to slow down a little bit or watch the bump or any of those sorts of things, because you'd hear that lip, that right angle lip that came down on the quarter panel, it would rub on the tire would rub on it, because the tire would move. The quarter panel wasn't going to move, but the tire would. It would have the up and down travel. So it's really important to determine your right backspace as to where your wheel's going to sit as it spins, and to keep it away from that quarter panel, or to move that quarter panel up by having a rolled inside edge. Anyway, that's FJ Ute, probably FX Ute as well. FJ panel van 2. On wider, higher wheels and tires. Now, let's talk about the front. Now, this is a new old stock spring. Obviously, it's going to travel up and down, shock absorber through the middle of it. Now, what was a common modification was, particularly amongst young apprentices, to heat this spring up. Both sides, heat the springs up both sides, and then get the car, as in like red hot, oxy-torch type. So put oxy-torches on them, heat them all up, and, get 6 big mates in your car and compress the suspension down and to stay in there while the metal cooled, because what they were trying to do is squash and change the compression of the spring. So they were trying to change the compression height of the spring, not the rate, but the height. The big problem in that was you do it both sides, you try and get it even, whatever was the case. But in doing that to this, this started off as a straight piece of metal, and it was made into a coil. And, through a furnace process, it was tempered correctly to whatever a engineer determined, so that it is correct for that application. Well, when you have a bunch of apprentices just get in there and heat it all up and whatever, and try and get the spring down to get the front of the car down, by heating this up, it makes it brittle, and then it's more susceptible to failure. So, that is part of the problem in doing that type of modification. You are better off going to, I don't know, Lovells or Petters, and getting a proper spring to the height that you want, rather than try and do shortcut modifications. Anyway, that's the spring. Now, the starter button on an FJ, FX, FJ, same thing. Same dog, same eyebrows, actually. So this is a Delco Remy part. Everyone's seen one of these. And all that's required is for the ignition to be energized, and then you've got a little bolt that side, screw head there, and they go and make contact. So, it's energized. You've got part of the wiring harness goes through here and comes out there. And then by touching the button, clicking the button, you are actually completing the circuit. So by completing the circuit, you're turning the car on. So you've turned the key on, you've energized the circuit to this point. So you've energized it to that point. It's not energized to here to make the starter motor turn over, but as soon as you push the button, it makes that part connect with that part, and then your starter motor turns over. Well, in a lot of instances, the FX and the FJ, 48 and FJ, had the starter button, but when the FE came out, it's a key. You're putting a key in ignition, and you're doing without a starter button, and it's a much more modern car. And in a lot of instances, I've seen where the starter button's been taken out and the ignition switch of a later model Holden has actually been installed, and they're sort of doing without the little starter button. So that's sort of just one modification that I've seen. Now, this is one given to me by my dad, and when I say given, I heard about this till I got it, and I found out about it Dad told me about it, and like a lot of things with your parents, you think, okay, whatever. However, he was right. Now, in this instance, it's a rear gearbox bearing, SKF, and it's a double row bearing. Let's see, here we go. Double row bearing. 7406231. So it's not just one row of bearings, it's got a double row, because Dad was saying to me in the taxis, because he had FX, FJ, FC taxis, same gearbox. And what they would do is they would want these heavy duty double row bearings to put in the back there to give them better longevity as far as service and operation was concerned, because to them, it doesn't matter paying a little bit extra. And my dad always bought really good kit because it was worth money to him to pay a little bit extra so that when he was on the road, he stayed on the road longer and was able to make more money because he wasn't off the road having, gearbox parts fail. So, what he said made a lot of sense. So that's an SKF part, and I was still buying parts of SKF for the power stations even in my time. Okay, so we've talked about the rims and tires, we've talked about the springs, the starter button, and the bearings, the heavy duty bearing. Now, people will have seen this and thought nothing of it. Now you'll see with the early models, there's two types of gearbox extension, and I'm not going to pick one up and show you because it's too heavy, but anyway, there's the painted steel type, and there's the alloy type. Now, from the army utes that we've serviced and been involved with, they all seem to have a alloy extension from the ones I've seen. So I'm not going to make a blanket statement saying that it must have an alloy extension housing at the back of the gearbox where the tail shaft slips into, otherwise it's wrong. That's not the case at all. I'm saying from everything that I've seen and the brains trust, it's a case of they've just been alloy extensions. Now, talking about army utes. So you get it 2 colors. So this is for a government only order. They would be in khaki or deep bronze green. People always forget the khaki thing, but it's deep bronze green as well. And we've had a talk amongst ourselves about this. And one of the important parts is some parts of the car are green and some aren't. And what we were finding is, and talking to people in the service and so on, if they worked on a piece, for instance, underneath the bonnet, you might find it painted green. Like, for instance, the motors weren't delivered green. They were delivered cafe grey, for a grey motor. However, what I'm saying is, if they pulled it out to work on it, don't be surprised if you find that car has now got a green motor. Or if they were doing work on the subframes or the apron panels, well, they would paint them. So it was their way of showing or telling the future workers what has actually been done on that car without necessarily writing it on a job card and it going into history, because let's face it, who really cares about that? But what they're doing is saying for the next bloke to work on it, what has actually been done to that car that's in front of them. So that's why I never get caught up with army utes as to what it must have and what it doesn't have and what's green and not green, because it varies. It really does vary depending upon what the dealership has done, how it was ordered, and what the army has done. Because the army even put their own sign writing on it, 22 pound on the wheel arch, on all 4 wheel arches, to say that's how much air we want in the tires, and also a set of serial numbers across the bonnet and so on, as well as their tack plates at the front and at the rear of the vehicle. Now, some of the other modifications. We're talking modifications. So I've seen plenty of Firewalls painted black rather than body color. And the 3 major FJs that I've bought, all 3 of them, Firewall painted black, not its body color for what it should be. I don't know why people did that, trying to make it look modern or whatever was the case, but with my panel van, I just wish people had left it alone, because it was beautiful paint underneath and you had to get through a lot to get to it. But anyway, so black Firewalls was the go. One of the other things that I like on a car, something subtle, was you'll see some FJs that have been converted to 12 volt and got for instance, a sealed beam in them. They might very well have an EH headlight bucket with an EH type sealed beam and a chrome and painted surround in front of the headlight, and that looks really smart. And that's a common accessory, and I really like that. But let's finish up on something that was a day 2 modification with for instance, let's talk about my ute. So I had 29th of April 1954 chassis rail 4403 Brisbane 1954. So when my car was delivered to the dealer, and obviously the dealer likes to try and get as much money out of the customer as possible. And it even applies today when you go and buy a car. You'll buy the car and then they'll say, oh, look, can you go and see Robert or Richie, or can you go and see Sarah or whatever? And they'll talk to you about your car. Well, you go there and they'll say, well, do you want mud flaps with your car? Tick. Do you want a tow bar with your car? Tick. Do you want rust proof? Maybe not. You don't know. And all these sorts of, and they're trying to increase the bill. So before that car goes out, they're trying to, General Motors have got, they're being paid for the car. The dealership is getting their sales percentage, so they're getting their commission for selling the car, and that's fine. But then what they're trying to do is, upsell you accessories and other parts of the car. Now, what was really common for the FJ was black body deadener. So FJs originally red oxide, nothing flash. It was a really good product. Don Loeffler's sent me pictures of FJs and 48 models getting dipped. Halfway up the doors, you can see the red oxide. Looks great. So what would happen is the dealership would get the car in, they would do pre-delivery. So pre-delivery is tuning the car and getting it, perfect, tightening up all the belts, doing a quality assurance, quality control, check of the vehicle before it goes out the door, because let's face it, if there is a problem during the warranty period, it's got to come back to them, and they're the ones that have got to fix it, and they're the ones that on-bill General Motors. So from a reputational perspective, they're trying to get the car right as much as possible. So cars made, shall we say, on day one, delivered to the dealer. It's not the next day, but a day two, accessory modification, whatever you want to call it, is it could be sprayed with bitumen spray. So they call it body deadener. So it's providing a barrier between the red oxide over the steel and the road and the elements. So it's sealing that. It's also a sound deadener as well. So it's providing some buffer between you and the road, so it's not as noisy, but it's also providing some protection from the weather and so on. Now, my ute had it, so I put it back. My green 56, put together in 1957 FJ, it doesn't. So I'm going to make it red oxide underneath, but knowing that, you could have black body deadener, and that's a dealership thing before you even got the car. So today we've talked about wheels, we've talked about back spacers, springs, starter buttons, heavy duty double row bearings. We've talked about some of the common modifications that was done in the day that I've seen and that have been in cars that have needed to be serviced and things like that, and some of the things that the dealers have done as well. Don't forget to share, like and subscribe. Have a look at what we're doing at Facebook. Tell your friends. Hope you've enjoyed 2022. I want to have a big shout out to our resident suspension guru, Russell Tronk. Hope you're getting better in hospital. And also our resident engineer, Mark Faulkner. Our thoughts and prayers are with you and your family at the moment, and we hope that every day gets better for you. But in the meantime, folks, in the lead up to Christmas of 2021, we look forward to a nice, prosperous 2022. Take care. You've been with Jules Knight on Jive Talking Garage.